Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the City Winery here in New York City. As you know, here on the Pace Report, I like to profile and interview musicians and bands that have really paid some very, very important contributions to the world of American roots music by way of jazz, rhythm and blues, hip-hop, as well as country. And tonight here on the Pace Report, multi-instrumentalist, vocalist, and writer Van Hunt is playing a very intimate performance tonight and celebrating his 15th anniversary of his debut self-titled album, Van Hunt. Now, what's very interesting about tonight's performance is that Van Hunt commemorated his brand new re-releasing of his album entitled Trim, the Reimagined Van Hunt, in which he stripped down a lot of the instruments on the original recording and he re-recorded it to his liking to today's standards, meaning he's performing it more intimately without a lot of the overdubs and a lot of the instruments that he recorded it on his produced record back in 2004. Now, this Grammy Award-winning vocalist and songwriter hails from Dayton, Ohio, and I had a chance to sit down and break bread with him about his illustrious career. This gentleman has been a prolific songwriter, writing for the likes of Cree Summer, as well as the great Dion Ferris, as well as he's been able to carry the lineage of great blues as well as rock and R&B by way of his style. Tonight we had a chance to sit down and break bread to talk about his origins in Dayton, Ohio, and we talk about and reflect on why Dayton, Ohio has contributed to some of the most important rhythm and blues and soul in the world, as well as talk about his role as a songwriter and what inspires him, as well as talk about how the record industry by way of the majors has made him reshift as well as rethink his game as putting his music out via streaming as well as the digital divide. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of Mr. Van Hunt performing live here at the City Winery here in New York City as part of the Pace Report.
This time you don't rescue me, I will blame you at all. Blame you at all. I know that I've gone in too deep for you to rescue all. Already insane. Yes, I am. Already paid. Y'all ready? Let me see.
Just blown away over the air.
Blown away over the ocean.
Just blown away over the air.
Blown away over the ocean.
Just blown away over the edge. I am just way over the edge. Now you sing it.
Never thought that I would be with the wind in hand. There's no to my sophistication that I go crazy again. Already insane. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. Was that you, Jones? Already insane. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. I was thinking I like more than being challenged. Already insane. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. You don't scare me, girl. Already insane. New York, y'all ready? Can I get that big old yeah right here? Two, three, four.
Just blown away over the
I followed you from the very, very beginning of your career. I saw you at the Magic Bag in Ferndale, Michigan for your very first record.
Yeah.
And right now you are celebrating the 15th anniversary of your self-titled record. And paint a picture for my viewers about where you were mentally, physically, and spiritually when you were getting this record together.
Well, the first record or the 15-year anniversary. Okay, the first record. Mentally, I was right in Detroit. To be frank, it was a place where my father. We didn't spend a lot of time together. We were a lot alike, and he's one of my favorite people in the world. My father, and he would take me to Detroit as a child. We'd ride up there, and it was and ride back, and it was a pleasure for me, like one of those little simple pleasures that you get just hanging with your old man, and that's really kind of where it all started. So the fact that Detroit plays such a big part in my early career, and I'm going back to the Magic Bag this year, it's huge for me. I love the city through all its ups and downs. It's like a larger Dayton, which is my hometown, to me.
Now, this record was executive produced by Randy Jackson, who was managing you at the time.
Sure.
I understand that the connection between you and Randy was through Deion Ferris, who you wrote a very big hit for back in the late 90s.
Sure, yeah, and that was the beginning of my career. I mean, Deion found me in Atlanta and basically put me into her band, and from there, Randy, heard my songs, and he's the one who chose "Hopeless" for Deion to sing. And that was my first, big song to be released. And then he asked me if I had any management for an artistic career, and I didn't. And he's like, I'm gonna do it, and we were off and running.
Hopeless was such a huge hit, and the movie was iconic. It's still, I mean, this movie, Love Jones, was no small feat at the time. It was a small film that did big and better things for Nia Long and also Lorenz Tate.
Yeah, totally. And it was one of those times in cinema where everybody involved went on to have careers, bigger careers. I mean, from the director to the leads in the act in the movie, and then the music. So I mean, all of us were there. Me, Maxwell, Lauryn Hill. We were all like throwing out our first few songs into that film. Yeah.
What's so interesting about your first album? First of all, you have a brand new record out, which is Trim. It's the Reimagined Van Hunt. And what you do is you redo all of the songs from your debut record. Why did you decide to revisit the record?
Well, my current manager, Steve Nice, he brought it up as an idea. He was like, "You're coming up on the 15th year anniversary, and you should just see what the songs feel like to you now." As an older guy, 15 years older. And it was interesting because playing the songs, I realized that I had written those songs for the older me. Because at the time I was just writing. I was just, as I was using my craftsmanship to kind of put songs together. But replaying them, I'm listening to them as a listener, and I realized that they meant much more to me now, lyrically, than they did then when I wrote them.
Dust, big breakout record for you. What was your inspiration and muse for writing that song?
Oh, wow. I don't recall the inspiration. I do recall writing the song, though, and I came up with it. And the first thing I said to my wife at the time was, I think I got something, the song that could really be big. And it turned out to be the first song that actually my current manager was the radio promotion guy at the record label at the time, and he chose that song. He was like, I can make something happen with that song. And then the other side of the department chose Seconds of Pleasure. So we had this dual release, and that was my intro to the world as Dust and Seconds of Pleasure. And I'm proud of that moment because it's probably one of the first times an artist has had essentially two sides of the record label, the black and the white side, choose a song, each from one album, and to run with it.
You know, a lot of kids were conceived on Seconds of Pleasure.
Well, yeah, now I know. And some of those kids have come and talked to me online. It's like I'm 14, 15 years old, or whatever. And my parents loved your music and whatever. Now I love it. So I'm on my second, third generation of fans.
You know, you and Cody Chestnut made my 2000s.
Oh man.
Both of you guys put out some very soulful. Your first record and Cody's record were very soulful and rocky. It just took me back to guys like Sly and the Family Stone, Curtis Mayfield, Buddy Miles. You guys were reaching for music that was still in our musical DNA in the rock and the blues side.
Yeah, it's amazing for you to say that, because we were trying to. I know Cody, and we were trying to pull something through a kind of vortex that was difficult to pull through, because you had this whole 20-year history of hip hop, which kind of sat in the middle of all of that, And so you're trying to pull it through the hip hop, which we all love hip hop, but it represented something that was kind of an obstacle to getting that kind of sound you're describing. You know what I mean? Something that was psychedelic and funky and and kind of loose. You know what I mean? Because hip hop represented something else during that kind of 20, 30 year span. So somebody like Cody or myself or D'Angelo, like we were trying to pull that music from the 70s into the 2000s, and it wasn't an easy task.
There's a term that I hate to this day, and I read an interview where you just detested also, neo soul. I think that is I think neo soul is almost the equivalent of describing salsa music. Tito Puente detested that term. He and Celia Cruz hated the term. I think neo soul kind of slaps soul and rock and blues, what you guys are trying to do, in the face.
Yeah. And I mean, it is a slight, to sit and say that this is kind of a new soul, neo soul. I mean, it is. It's just soul music. But, in their defense, people are just trying to brand things so that they can sell it. And it's hard to say this is just a continuation of soul and make that seem like something you can sell. So it had to come up with some kind of branding that sounded like something sexy that you could go and sell. So neo soul was it. I don't like the term at all, and I don't even see myself as a soul singer. To me, I'm just blues and it's kind of funk and a little bit of rhythm and blues, basically.
Is there anything different that you would have done now listening to your debut record versus what you did back 15 years ago?
No, not at all. I've loved every minute of my career, cherished it all, and I look forward to what comes next. I'm having a blast. I'm happy, so I can't say there's anything I regret at all.
Van, you are from Dayton, Ohio. I'm an hour and a half from your hometown, Indianapolis.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Let's talk about this, because Dayton has given the music world, soul and funk world, some of the most iconic musicians and bands. Let me go through a list of them.
Okay.
There's Fazo, the Trotman Brothers, Zapp,
Yeah.
Slave, Steve Arrington, who I've interviewed here on the Pace Report,
Wow.
Lakeside, the Wilder Brothers, Heatwave.
Yeah.
Now, they originally started in Germany. He was stationed in Germany, but he and Rod Temperton got together, and then there's the Ohio Players. And then we got Walter Junie Morrison.
Yeah.
And then if we really want to throw a little salt in the wound, we could go about 50 miles up the street to Cincinnati, and we have the Collins Brothers,
Yeah.
and then we have the Isley Brothers.
Sure.
What makes Dayton this symbol of funk?
Yeah. Well, if you're gonna add Cincinnati, you might as well add. Well, you said the Collins brothers, Bootsy and Catfish.
And King Records in Cincinnati.
King Records, exactly. I think that it all starts with a little incident called Roswell. I know that's weird, but from that incident, and nobody knows what happened at Roswell, but from that incident, you had something that fueled Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and you had all these technicians, professors, scientists who came to Wright-Patterson, and then they filtered out into the city. And some of them became teachers. Some of their children became teachers. Some of their children went into the school system in Dayton, and it strengthened the school system. Junie told me himself that when he emerged from his high school, he was capable of conducting any orchestra in the world, and the education that he received was unlike any high school education in anywhere. And so I think that when you have that kind of strength, coming from a school system, it's going to, spread out and become this thing. I mean, all those kids were super talented. I mean, I tell people all the time who don't know that, Junie Morrison was just simply the most talented musician, the biggest contribution to modern music. I think you'd have to go as far back as Thelonious Monk or maybe even Louis Armstrong to find somebody who was as talented and gave as much. No one knows, but I mean, this guy was completely futuristic and completely integral to the modern music era.
Junie was the music director, and that man penned one of the songs and the catalyst that made the Ohio Players, Funky Worm.
Yeah. Not only that, but he really strengthened them as a band. He synthesized the band because they had largely been a blues band before Junie came along, and also Jimmy Diamond, the drummer, and that really brought a kind of melodic sense to what they were doing, an orchestral harmonic sense, and it just synthesized everything for them. And then, of course, he went on to Parliament Funkadelic and
One Nation Under Groove.
Yeah, and Not So Needy, which is just a genius song. People are still trying to understand exactly what's happening with that song, and the fact that Junie and Bernie were all in the same group. It's just Yeah, it's just astonishing.
And you know, we talking about Bernie Worrell. A lot of people don't give Bernie a lot of credit for this. But Bernie Worrell, Keith Emerson, Chris Jasper,
Sure.
and I'm leaving out one more keyboard player, Stevie Wonder. They were the ones that introduced the world to the clavinet, and they also introduced, and they just did things with the keyboards that unparalleled. They changed the game of how we integrate electronics to the music.
Yeah. And I mean, when you think about Junie, and of course you have to throw Sly in there, who inspired all of those guys you're talking about in terms of his craftsmanship, ability to write songs. Everybody loved Sly because of the songs. Like in the previous generation, everybody loved Thelonious Monk because he was the songwriter for jazz, and Sly was kind of the songwriter for funk. And everybody kind of built their thing around Sly and what he did. And then Junie came along, and Junie really showed everybody how to take the funk, the blues, and put it into the synthesizer. And then later on, he showed them how to put it into the internet. Junie's one of the first people to do like a complete song with an iPad. You know, it's just beautiful stuff. He built websites, and the guy was an engineer. He was an incredible guitarist, incredible keyboardist, songwriter. He was everything.
Junie, I read some really interesting things about him. There was a period when he had to move back to Dayton, and he had to deliver pizzas and deliver newspapers. And then he ended up producing records for John Tesh, James Ingram. I mean, his career has had some incredible highs and incredible lows.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, he would have told you, you know, those come with the lumps. You know, I mean, you can't necessarily be a forerunner for ideas and also expect at the same time to be completely accepted. You know what I mean? And make all the money that everybody else is making. It just doesn't work that way, particularly when you talk about capitalism. He was a pioneer, and sometimes that meant a sacrifice. You know, and he understood that.
It's a thief. I won't believe a word she say. She won't have your smile, and we could have a while. But I know I miss you just the same. Conversation is no substitute for what you do, for what I lose when I'm without you. Temptation, when my nights get long, I'm getting stronger and stronger. Baby, don't you worry, there's no pressure. I'm happy when we're together. I'll be waiting on you. I'm in no hurry, girl, don't you worry. Waiting for you. If she's sweeter than usual, I'll say a polite hello, and I'll turn to you. You satisfy me in every way. I'm a different guy every day. You suit my taste, and you're all I need to know. Conversation is no substitute for what you do, or what I lose when I'm without you. Temptation.
There's a lot of blues,
Yeah.
there's a lot of soul, and there's a lot of rock in your music. Who are some of the influences on the guitar? Because you're a multi-instrumentalist. In fact, you play a lot of instruments, and the instruments that you play bring a different myriad to the music that you present.
But you said who are some of my influences? Well, Sugarfoot, for sure, from how players. Probably my biggest influence on guitar. I just love Sugarfoot.
Did you ever meet him?
Yeah, we met. He was one of the first people I met when my record came out because I wanted to tell him, how much he meant to me. And over my career, he and Sly have just tried to get closer and closer to what they did. And I also, during doing that, I found myself getting closer and closer to what were even deeper roots for me with Junior Kimbrough and Muddy Waters. My family's from Mississippi. And so just understanding and discovering that music really brought it all home to me.
So that record, There's a Riot Going On, that touched a nerve with Prince, and it probably touched a nerve with you also.
well, Prince has the Ballad of Dorothy Parker to kind of thank. He has the riot going on to thank for that song because you can tell he was vibing on that. And I mean, D'Angelo, that record has fueled a lot of careers, and including me. It's just genius, man. It's to be frank, when you talk about the black movement that's happening now in the modern era, I think that There's a Riot Going On could easily be the soundtrack for that. Just like any other Parliament Funkadelic album or whatever. But There's a Riot Going On is what everybody used to kind of show the world like you can write a song and still be funky. You can write a song and still be cool. You don't have to have this kind of gimmicky stunting that goes on in our industry where people use more of the publicity. Or publicity stunts to kind of sell music. You can actually write a good song and then let everything build from there. The entertainment and all that. Sly got that, and then he always put the song first, and that's why his music is still there, still strong. You heard it tonight. I mean, somebody was playing some Sly as soon as I got off stage, and it still sounds fresh. Some 50, 60-year-old music.
Amir Thompson, better known to the music world as Questlove, hails There's a Riot Going On as the first funk record ever recorded.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you can't dismiss the James Brown records, and I think that it was there's music before There's a Riot Going On and there's music after. There's no doubt about that. In all music. I think the entire music industry shifted after There's a Riot Going On, along with what's going on with Marvin Gaye. It completely changed the industry.
One of the things that I was very disappointed in was that after you dropped your second record, you got mixed up in the new, what we call the record politics. Blue Note, EMI took over, and as your career was just about to Blue Note decides to not release your EP, and they had the audacity to ask you to buy your masters back of the record that you recorded.
Yeah.
How did you feel, and how did you overcome that? Because there was a period of time where people didn't hear from you for a minute.
Yeah, it wasn't really about that record. I mean, obviously, that had a big impact on me. Their choice to not release the record had a big impact on my career, but my disappearance had less to do about that record than it is just about being able to find something else to say that I wanted to say. And so it took me a minute to gather those thoughts because I had put so much into that record, So when they decided not to release it, it did leave me, it took a year for them to decide not to release it. And then I lost 2 years just trying to figure out what to say after that. So we wound up with 3-4 years there where, I wasn't in the scene. But, the decision for them to not release the record had more to do with social economic issues than anything else, to be frank. And it was later Blue Note artists who were largely responsible, Nicholas Payton, Jason Moran, and Robert Glasper, who were largely responsible for having getting that record released, because they were like, Popular represents, it showed to us that we could come out and be that was a bridge for us between the jazz from old Blue Note and the music we wanted to make. You know, so for them, they didn't understand. They didn't even, I don't think some of them didn't even know that this music wasn't available. They had lived with it and used it as inspiration.
Thank God for Nicholas Payton.
Yeah.
That man's been on the front lines restoring the name of American roots music.
Yeah.
And Jason Moran. Both of them are on the front lines.
Yeah.
You know, I think the direction you're going with the online and the streaming, that seems to be where everybody is going now. Tyler, the Creator, made a whole business practice of this. Yeah. How's it working for you, and what do you suggest other musicians who are going in that direction to do? Do you think it's good for them to follow suit with that?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, you just said it. Tyler, the Creator, is probably the paradigm, certainly the epitome, I think, of the modern artist and how you want to kind of model your success. I mean, this guy is doing a festival at the Dodger Stadium, and he has zero radio play. You know, many people don't even know of his existence. You know, so I think that's perfect. You know, and not only that, but he's talented. You know, and he and his whole clique. So I love that. And I love any opportunity that allows you to kind of be able to say what you want to say and do that for a living. That's very fulfilling. You know, I'm a very happy man, even though I'm not a rich man. That should tell people something. You know?
Now, tell the viewers out here where they can buy it, because you have 6 records that you've released, and they're on your website. Tell everybody where to get and tell the projects that's on the project.
Oh, yeah. So you can find all my music on vanhunt.com or Spotify, which actually pays a little more these days ever since the record industry has been harassing them to pay more. So everything is there, all 6 records, and I've released other things like piano instrumental records. And
Ivory's is a bad record, man.
Yeah, thank you. And so just little things that I've put out over the years just to kind of tease the market. But I'm really excited about the new music that we have in store. And I'm going to go back and collect brothers like Nicholas Payton and Jason Moran and Robert Glasper and a whole bunch of other cats, Corey Henry. And we're all making new music together.
I keep forgetting to announce this song. This song I wrote for Lauren Hill. She never heard it. If she had. Faces have trouble standing when it's less than a merry affair. When you communicate through the writing on the wall, there's no love for you there. You wanted to draw a picture, but your relationship could never hold a pose. You're left with a room full of sketches that only hint at the love you wanted to know. Let it out, let it go. Hold back the tears long ago. Let it fall on the floor. Not on your will to be stronger. Who are you? In the face of disappointment, where is your character? The one who keeps you caught you by surprise. How time changes people and places. Would you guard over your ruins like you do? If you know your first kiss was your greatest, let it go. Hold back the tears. When you work to
Van Hunt, what does soul music mean to you?
soul music means, man, you know, it's very comprehensive. Immediately, what comes to mind is George Clinton, who I think that he's an underrated genius. I don't think that people understand what it takes to be a ringleader. You know, this guy harnessed 40 exceptional musicians and created a whole lineage of music, and that's without ever playing anything himself. Just talking, just giving a philosophical approach to 40 musicians. You know what I mean? Over the years, that to me is soul music, because it operates in a way in which the village says we're responsible for our victims and our villains. I think that's very powerful.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at the City Winery here in New York City. Make sure you take time to go out and support Van Hunt for his upcoming summer tour, which will be coming to a city near you. For more information on his upcoming tour dates, as well as to order his CD Trim, the Reimagined Van Hunt, visit him online at vanhunt.com, as well as facebook.com/Van Hunt. I'd like to personally thank the incomparable Van Hunt for his time, as well as the staff and management here at the City Winery. Also, please like, share, and subscribe to my videos both here on YouTube and Vimeo, and visit my website, thepacereport.com, for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.
And if this time you don't rescue me, I will bring you right on. I'm going into deep for you to rescue the fall. Already insane. Yes, I am. Already buried. Already insane. Y'all ready? Let me see.